Do you do any gardening, Tom?
I do not. No, that's something I should do, isn't it?
Well, I don't think you're going to get very far in gardening if you're like, I should be doing gardening. Like. Does your wife garden?
Yeah, she does. She grows vegetables pretty much every summer.
Okay. Do you like touching earth?
You mean do I like getting dirt under my fingernails?
Yeah.
I don't mind.
But it's not like something's missing from your life if your hands aren't like plunged in a pile of dirt.
No, right. I don't think so much it's the dirt I'm missing. It's probably just the actual getting down on your knees and physical labor that I'm probably avoiding.
Yeah. Do you know raised bed gardening and square foot gardening, that kind of concept?
Yeah. We've had raised beds before.
Okay,
here.
Yeah. So that sort of has a geeky sort of space efficiency sensibility to it that may appeal to you. And if you set that up right, it's not that labor intensive.
Yeah, I acknowledge that it's probably a very interesting hobby that I should try at some point. I just haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
In my long list of hobbies.
When I first started my raised beds years ago, and I was putting all the dirt down, right? And so I got some stuff delivered, and I was putting it all in. I found it really enjoyable just to be moving all the dirt around. I had bare feet, bare hands, and it's all very earthy, very very Hobbit-like.
Are you growing anything this summer?
So it's a good question because we're going to be on vacation for 3 or 4 weeks. So it's
yeah, that's right.
However, the weather is so nice this weekend. I thought, it'd be a shame not to just throw down some snap peas.
Is there something that you can grow that doesn't really need a lot of attention day after day?
Yeah. There's different vegetables like that. Like you can grow radishes in 4 weeks if you wanted. That's like the novice gardener vegetable you always start with because you can put them down early and then they come up in 4 weeks and they're very hardy.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not too many days in a row you can be like, yeah, radishes.
If I was going to try gardening, say this summer, what would you recommend for a noob?
I would say put down some snap peas right now.
Right now, okay.
So sugar snap peas, they're fun because they go in pretty much right now. And so they're an early season crop, so they don't last too long in the high heat.
Yeah.
But they're fun because they grow, they're vines. And so they grow up. You put like little stakes and stuff, so you watch them grow. And picking a sugar snap pea right off the vine, that's some good eating right there, Tom.
It's a good snack.
Yeah. You get like an immediate yummy payoff from a snap pea. And then radishes are fun just because, like I said, they come up so quick. So you get a little confidence boost in the beginning of the season. Most novice gardeners do some tomatoes. I've had different kind of luck with tomatoes. For the amount of time I've put into gardening, my actual success rate is actually not that fantastic. So you might want to be asking some more successful gardeners. I'm sure your wife could probably hit you up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was really into this idea of having this brassica bed. So one category of vegetables is brassicas. So this is like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, these kinds of like vegetables which are known for being incredibly nutrient dense. Apparently they attract this one particular kind of moth. And so this little white moth ate through all my brassicas one year. And so I designed this intricate system of hoops that were going to go over my raised bed. And then you throw over this kind of material, a very thinly webbed material. It's like what brides wear for veils. Small enough to keep the moth out, but large enough to let the sunlight and water in. And that was great for a while, and then it ripped, and then all the moths got in, so I more enjoy designing it, all of it, and then I'm like, oh, I actually have to. I had this intricate watering system where I had these soaker hoses that were half buried in the dirt, coming in through the side of the raised bed, and then I put the soaker hoses on a timer, and then I put leaves on top of the soaker hose so that it would just time it, it would water it, and then the moisture in the soil would be kept because there was a cover on top of it. And
so you geeked out your garden.
Yes. Right. But if you compare the amount of time and effort I put into the actual, return on investment, that's what gardening is for. It's like if you're only looking at it in terms of how many vegetables can I get out of it, I'm sure there's people who like have good skills and they know how to do it, but
Yeah.
there's something about working with the land when you don't actually need to, right? That's sort of you're forcing the issue of having an old school analog experience. I guess that's what I liked about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's good preparation for the zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely. Could be closer than you think, Tom. What would you do? The whole grid just flopped down tomorrow.
I have no idea, but I don't think I'd last very long.
We wouldn't be producing any podcasts, that's for sure.
No. Unless we did them live in person. Traveling podcast troupe.
All right, that's definitely on my horizon. That's part of my zombie apocalypse plan. Sweet.
Yeah. Hey, new Doctor Who.
Did you see it?
I did.
We get to review it. We get to review it. Da, 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 da. You're not going to cut that out. That doesn't count as a song.
I don't know what it counts as.
I just referenced it. Yeah, I saw it last night.
Yeah, I'm glad it's back. It's been a little while since we've had new episodes.
It's been a year and a half, right?
If you don't count the Christmas episode.
Yeah, right. They had a lot of restart reboot to do.
Yeah, every few years they make an episode that acts as an entrance point for new viewers, and that was the case with this one.
Yes, I definitely got that in spades last night. In fact, the title of it was even reminiscent of its purpose, the pilot.
Right.
So the very consciously, oh yeah, we haven't had Doctor Who in a year and a half, and plus, is this correct? I mean, you follow British TV more than I do, but the ratings have not been what every show wants better ratings, but they haven't been as nice as they want them to be recently.
They've been down compared to like Matt Smith, yeah.
Yeah, so rebooting that and reintroducing a new companion. I shouldn't say introducing a new companion with Bill Perlmackie. And I didn't know Nardole was going to be there. Yeah,
I really like Matt Lucas. I'm glad they're giving him more material to work with, more episodes.
Yeah, so there were definitely big chunks of the episode that were, this is the Doctor, he travels in space, here's the TARDIS, it's bigger on the inside, yada, yada, yada. So what was your initial reaction, Tom? Were you pleased? Were you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy. One, that it's back and I get to watch more Doctor Who. And I was happy that it seemed like a pretty good episode. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't awful. It was acceptable.
Yeah, I thought I settled on kind of a B+ rating. I was fairly. It was not like the world's greatest, most in-depth plot ever. Pretty much this puddle lady that chases them around.
Yeah.
But again, with introducing a new companion plus kind of rebooting the whole series.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah, you can't make it too plot heavy. So I sort of give them a pass for that. Although I was a little concerned with in terms of the tone that they were adopting, Tom. And within the first minute, you have the Doctor playing the guitar, and I'm like, oh, Tom's not going to like this.
Yeah, I still don't like that. But thankfully it was very brief.
Yes, it was brief. But yeah, no, I liked the dialogue. I thought the dialogue was snappy. I liked the character. It did. I don't know if this is because I've seen so much Doctor Who that it seems so light in comparison, but you know how there was like with Clara and the Impossible Girl and like the 37 layers of mystery of who she is.
Yeah.
Like Bill seems completely the opposite.
Yeah, she's just a normal lunch lady. Thank you. There's no great mystery about her. At least we don't think so yet.
Yeah, like it's not to say that she won't be like a well-played character and interesting and all that. And I do like the kind of like pointing out the obvious flaws of like, wait a minute, TARDIS, isn't that spelled in English? Not if you're an alien, how does that work? So I thought she had some good lines there. I like Nardole. Yeah, I was pretty psyched. I was like happy with the return. It felt a little more bouncy, like Matt Smithy to me than the more brooding tone of past series. So I was pleased with that.
Yeah, it was very lighthearted for the most part.
Yeah.
And as a longtime Whovian, I was pleased to see a few references to the classic series as well show up a couple times.
So the two photos on his desk were River Song, and was that his daughter from the first Doctor?
His granddaughter, Susan, yes.
His granddaughter, Susan, that's right. I thought I recognized her.
And I've read rumors here and there about what might be coming in the series, but I won't repeat anything here for spoilers reasons. But Moffat doesn't do stuff like that for no reason. I think that picture is on her desk for a reason.
Oh, true. Yeah, no, he does have a history of sort of planting little seeds there. And we have the vault that has been introduced and unexplained at the bottom of the university. I liked seeing the Daleks because I always loved seeing the Daleks, although I thought they were sort of shoehorned in there. It was kind of like, hey, we're doing an intro to Doctor Who. We might as well like run by the Daleks for 5 seconds.
Yeah, that was a way to tick the box. So if we got the Daleks in this series, now we can move on to other things.
Yeah. Although I read later that was a battle from the Tom Baker years.
The Mavellans were the enemies there. Yes, that was a reference to the classic series.
Yeah, I like how they do that kind of stuff. There you go. Yeah. So I think Doctor Who looks to be in good stead.
Okay. Yep.
I hope
we get new episodes for the next few weeks.
Yeah,
which is good.
Rocking and rolling. We also had a new trailer come out, Thomas.
Yes, The Last Jedi, first teaser trailer. That was another good highlight of this past weekend.
We should probably note that this was the actual trailer for episode 8. There was a hullabaloo on the internet with a fake trailer that came out that had millions of views and hooked many people in, including myself.
Oh man, yeah, you shouldn't admit to that.
I gotta be honest.
How could you have fallen for that? That was just so obviously fake.
Well, because of the past footage and all that business?
Yeah, I mean, the quality was so bad.
Huh.
You wanted to believe, didn't you?
I did. I am very gullible when it comes to these things.
I think we've covered that before. Yes, you are.
Yeah, that's the other thing is I have to admit, I really, really wanted this Doctor Who episode to be good. So if somebody wants to tear it apart, I'm not sure I could really argue with them from an objective standpoint because I really wanted it to be good.
Yeah.
So we had our real trailer for episode 8.
Yeah. We didn't really glean much out of it other than Luke Skywalker finally speaks.
Yeah, so he said some very interesting things, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end. Dude.
No more light versus dark. We need to find the balance in the Force.
So that's one possible interpretation. So if it comes sort of towards the end of his experience, engagement training with Rey, I would say yes. That's the interpretation that I took. So more of a dark crystal-y thing, right? Where there's a greater arc going on here where the light and the dark need to achieve balance. In fact, it made me think of, the original prophecy of Anakin, the prophecy that the one who would bring balance to the Force. And then if you think of the entire sequence of events in the whole Star Wars universe since Anakin was found, has there ever really been a time of balance?
No, there hasn't.
Right. It's been either Sith total empire or the good guys and the Jedi are totally winning. So we're still sort of on this arc. And I kind of got that sense from Luke when he says, he's asking Rey what she sees apparently in her Force vision or whatever. And she says light, darkness, and balance. And then he says, it's so much bigger. It's like he's been chilling and meditating on this rock for years. And he's like, dude, the Force, let me tell you about the Force, man. And he's just like, it's so much bigger.
You're really chomping at the bit to get into some Jedi philosophy.
I really wanted to expand, man. Like, that's one of the knocks on Star Wars. It's a little too white flag versus black flag kind of good evil thing.
Yeah.
But the other red herring possibility is that all of that is a wash, and it's really just these are some of the first things he's saying, and that he's just disillusioned, and that it's going to take him a little time to get out of his curmudgeon-y self until he, trains Rey. So
yeah, we still have a bunch more months to wait, though.
Yes, those Jedi, those crazy Jedi and Sith. When are they going to get together and have a good time, huh?
Something I haven't asked you about before.
Yes,
that's also on my geek horizon this weekend. Do you have any interest at all in Mystery Science Theater?
I've seen little clips of it, and I've always felt like that's something that I would really like, but I've not given myself the proper due to sit down and give it a fair shake. So it seems like something I should like. Therefore, I'm hesitant to actually sit down and give it a go.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, I'm going to offend some people here now. So it's kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, by all accounts, I should like this guitarist. He's extremely well skilled and accomplished and respected. But every time I listen to him, I'm just like, just doesn't do it for me, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
So I'm worried that there might be this like really cool thread of geek cred that, again, I mean, there's already some holes in my geek armor, Tom. I mean, let's be honest. You know, I'm not the world's, coolest geek in the world. So
is there such a thing?
Well, that's a good question. Perhaps we should have a podcast topic to explore that. Yeah, so I'm worried if I sit down. Plus, haven't there been like 2 or 3 versions of it? Like it's being rebooted now. Is that true?
Well, it's back on Netflix now after 18 years of being off the air.
Oh, it's on Netflix. So the old episodes are on Netflix.
No, it's a brand new series it's a reboot of the old classic series with a new cast.
Oh, okay. And just like reset the table for me. It's pretty much a couple of comedy writers and robots riffing and harassing B-grade sci-fi movies. Pretty much, yes, exactly right.
And it had a really successful Kickstarter campaign to bring it back, which I actually chipped in on as well.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, well, I'm a longtime fan. So Joel Hodgson, the original creator of the series, managed to raise like millions of dollars off this Kickstarter and got 14 new episodes produced on Netflix.
Millions, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've seen the first 2 episodes already, and I'm very pleased to say it's actually pretty good.
Nice.
So it's a good entry point to try the series, I guess, if you haven't seen any of the classic stuff.
Do you think the classic stuff is like leaps and bounds better than the new stuff, or?
No, and that's what's pleasing. I think that the new crew doing it is as good, if not better, than what came before.
Okay.
There was a lot of hue and cry about from some of the longtime fans that they were bringing the show back, and they weren't bringing back the original cast. They were casting new people as the robots and the main host. But I think that absolutely was the right decision because these guys are younger and they have a different sense of humor than the old fogies who were doing the old series.
Right.
And it makes it seem fresh, and it's very. I think it works.
Cool.
It's still a great format even after 200 episodes they've done. But it's something for geeks to celebrate, I think.
Awesome. I'll have to give that a check out. So do you get anything from having been a Kickstarter supporter? You get like a little button in the mail or something like that?
It depends on how much you gave, but
right.
I mean, the big reward is just getting the show back on TV.
Well, all right then. So is this like a family-friendly show, or do they like get?
Yeah, it's family-friendly. Yeah.
Okay, so they don't do naughty humor.
No, they don't. It's just rapid fire jokes, gags, geek references.
Right.
They throw so many jokes at you that if 9 are at least one of them will be good.
Right. Hey, maybe we could. We've been trying to recycle and reformulate our content here, right? Maybe we could cut up the worst parts that we've ever recorded, and then record over them, and then insult ourselves.
Oh, I don't know if I could do that. Some of those worst bits that I've cut out, I've taken to the backyard and buried already. So, is it time for me to collect your homework?
I am ready. And I am pleased to say that I have completed both of my homework assignments. So you should be very proud. I did not do the merged 5-paragraph essay format.
Yeah.
Because, I find it hard to not be derivative when have you found a little bit about this, Tom, as we've done topics? So, like, I'll experience the thing directly, right? So whether it's Goldberg Variations here, or Ender's Game, or whatever. And then, as I'm sort of bouncing around the internet a little bit, I'll hear different interpretations or different critiques or reviews of something, and then it starts to color my thinking. And then I always have this like part of me is like, "Ooh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that way," and so I want to read more. But then I'm like, "Wait a minute, I haven't formulated my own natural take on it. Is that not going to express because I'm getting this." Other person's more well-formulated structure in my head first, so
it's getting mixed in with your own opinions. You can't tell which is which.
Yeah, there was, on a related note, on something we've talked about before. There was how do you say this in Reddit ease? A highly upvoted Reddit post on the movies subreddit about how different this person's experience has been going to movies having not seen any trailers versus seeing trailers, and it's just the mind's natural tendency, absent something to react to, is that you start reacting and pre-formulating a conception about something based on a trailer. And then you see something, what's totally different, you're at least going to have to expend some mental energy reworking that conception. And so it's fun to get excited. I mean, I like seeing the trailers for Star Wars, for example, but I've sort of made the mental choice that I don't mind not going into it totally pure.
So which of your two homework assignments was most colored by other people's opinions?
I don't know. So I tried to be pure with the Goldberg variations, right? So I followed that link you sent and downloaded the free version of these 30 variations. It was cool. So my initial experience was just washing over me because I hadn't heard it before. And then I started to I sum total listened to it like 3 or 4 times all the way through. And then there were 2 or 3 of them that I particularly liked, and so I was listening to those 2 or 3 over and over, and then it was interesting to find that my favorite one, number 25, which is one of the few minor key versions, is famously known for being like this. I guess somebody calls it the black pearl of the collection, because most of them are these bouncy G major happy tunes, and this is this long, sad, minor, more chromatically intense kind of expression. And then, so there was a tongue-in-cheek criticism. I think I sent you this article from this pianist who really loves them, but was trying to describe why you should hate them. He called them annoyingly unimpeachable. This is the thing that's most annoying about Bach, is he's too excellent.
Yeah,
And that, therefore, he's not reflective of the messier human condition, and so therefore somehow unrelatable.
So how did you relate to them?
Overall, I found them too dense to listen to in a satisfactory way altogether. So I had the 30 in a row, and I just started listening to them one after another. And after the 4th or 5th one, my mind just felt full. It's even trying to just kind of let go and have it wash over me, it just felt just kind of too dense. It's like you were running past 30 different paintings and not being able, really intense, detailed paintings, and not being able to dive into each one. So I found that a little jarring. I think that's why I liked number 25 so much, is that it really slows things down.
You liked it because it stood out from the rest of them.
Yeah. In fact, it has this in the middle. There's, I don't know if it's a fake pause, but it has this moment in the middle where it just stops. And you kind of think it's over. And then it completely starts up again, and it's nice too, because even though there's like a common theme to it, there's no rigid structure, and so it has this nice sort of meandering, like kind of feel to it. There was some others that were much faster and chippier that I also really liked, but I found it harder to remember those individually because they sort of meshed in with the other ones. Overall, I really enjoyed the experience of listening to them. Did you do any more delving into or reflecting on? I know you've listened to these for a long time.
Yeah, I listened to a bunch more times in the past couple of weeks, since we last spoke.
I did get a sense that I was missing a lot.
Why is that? Well,
just from like the 2 or 3 reviews of them that I read, even that weren't like intensely musicological. How do you say that? Mycological? Musicological? Musicological?
Musicological. That sounds likely.
They're talking about how much depth and subtle variation there is, and this happens, and this is amazing, and I just felt like the vast majority of it was blowing me by.
Yeah, I suppose you can listen to it on one level where you don't really know what he's trying to do with these pieces, and just listen to them as music, and they're all. Most of them are fast tempo, they're happy sounding. There's a few little gloomy bits here and there, but mostly it's just pleasant, if not intricate piano music. But there's also, if you delve a little deeper into the how they're constructed, there's a lot to wrap your head around as far as the type of techniques and compositional tricks Bach was pulling off with these things.
Yeah, he was fairly technically accomplished. Is that correct? In addition to being obviously like amazing composer.
Oh yeah, he knew his stuff.
Hands crossing over hands, that kind of business.
Oh yeah, he was a virtuoso player, but he knew his stuff inside and out. All the compositional tricks that were available to him at the time. He was an educator as well. He taught pupils. And these 30 variations on this harmonic progression are basically a look at what I can do. These are all different ways I can express the same idea, but in different variations and different techniques. It's like an instruction manual for how to, spin melodies out of a simple chord progression.
Right. Yeah, it did feel a little bit show-offy at times.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
Which I guess is fine if you have something like he has to show off. It's just 30 hits of that in a row was like woof. I did find a cool video by so I guess Glenn Gould was one of the pianists in the 20th century who greatly popularized.
Right, his 1950s recording was what brought this piece to the mainstream attention.
Yeah. And there's a great video of him playing number 25. He has this really funky style where he really leans over the keys. Like his face is nearly touching the keys, and he's got these hands are like just delicately stroking the keys in this feathery sort of motion. He's a real funky dude.
He has a very idiosyncratic playing style. And if you listen to his recordings, the other thing he's famous for is that he has this involuntary humming that he does along when he's playing that you can hear in the background in his recordings. It drives my wife crazy.
Wow. It's weird how there would be that much physical, because if you're just listening to a recording of him playing that, you're getting none of that. You're getting none of his little hovering above the keyboard business.
But you can hear him humming in the background.
Yeah.
So, in your reading about the Goldbergs, did you read anything about the series of canons that are in the variations? Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, I didn't understand what a canon was specifically. What is a canon?
The most famous version of a canon would be like the simple "Row, Row, Row Your Boat" song.
Oh, okay.
Where one person repeats a phrase and then the other person comes in with the same phrase but delayed a measure, and so on and so on.
Oh, like overlaid.
Yes.
And so within a piece, you would have, what, either the two hands of the piano doing this?
It would be the one melody followed by the exact same melody again, but displaced in time. So you have one melody and one measure, and then you have the exact same melody again in the second measure, starting in one measure behind the first melody. But the melody keeps going, and it kind of echoes each other. So and every third variation in the Goldbergs is a example of a canon that gets increasingly more sophisticated. Because like the third variation is the most simple of a canon. It has the melody that starts, and then one measure later, the exact same melody and at the exact same pitch starts again, in unison with the first melody, and they kind of overlap each other. So what starts as measure 1 shows up again in measure 2, and what's measure 2 shows up again in measure 3. So it's kind of like just a little overlap of the melody, and it has to harmonize with itself. It has to he has to write it in a way that it also harmonizes with the bass line. That's the variation of the chord progression, but also has to harmonize with itself. But as he goes along, each canon in the series changes slightly. So like the second canon is the same melody, but not only is it displaced in time, it's also displaced in pitch. So the second entrance of the melody comes in on the second on the scale. So it's one note higher, and the third canon is the canon on the third and fourth and the fifth and the sixth and so on throughout the whole series of canons. And it's just like technically it's a tour de force of canon writing.
That seems incredibly complicated.
Yeah, and by the time you get to like the variation 15, which is a canon on the fifth in the 8-note scale, not only is he shifting in time, where the melody repeats itself after the first time, it's shifted in pitch by a fifth, so it goes up in pitch. It also, at that point, he inverts the melody, so where it goes up in one melody, it goes down in the other. It's like a mirror image. And it all harmonizes with itself. So he has to compose a melody that will reflect itself, displace itself in time and in pitch, and still mesh together with itself. Which to me that just breaks my brain at this point. I can't see how any human being can possibly come up with a thing, but he pulls it off. Yeah, I mean, when you listen to it, you don't really get that sense that there's something. You can miss that very easily listening to it. You don't hear it as a kind of mirrored reflection of itself.
As you're describing this, the only things I can think of that relate to it are either like those crazy palindrome sentences that are the exact same forwards and backwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
Therefore the construction has to be ridiculous. Or like, you ever seen those like intense MC Escher designs where there's like one image or form, then it transforms into another image or form, and then transforms back again, like kind of some of these like wider range drawings he makes. Dude, that's whack.
And I mean, it's just like an amazing tour de force of musicianship to create something like this. It just boggles my mind, and it's beautiful to listen to.
Did people like Bach? Did other musicians like him when he was composing, like his peers? I could see like him walking into a room and be like, "Oh man, here's J.S. Bach. What like? How's he gonna make us look like idiots this time?"
It's my understanding that he was known during his time as mostly as a fantastic organist, not so much as a composer.
Oh, interesting.
Because he was a working musician. I mean, he worked for the city of Leipzig for like 20 years as the music director for their churches.
Oh.
He just had to compose music for church services every week, you know, and occasionally he would play concertos down at the local coffee house. But it was only after, like 100 years after his death where his reputation really skyrocketed, when people started digging up these kinds of things and realizing he was just an immense genius. But he never really traveled much. He didn't like tour Europe like Mozart did or Beethoven or whatever.
Interesting. It's weird how some artists take much, much longer to be revealed.
Yeah, and today he's considered one of the greatest of all time. And at the time, he was just some guy working for a living, just writing music. He was just basically forgotten after he died, except for a few colleagues and stuff that really get what he was doing. He didn't really have much music published during his lifetime.
This is very similar to Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
She wrote mostly in seclusion, had a few poems published, but was an absolute unknown and died. And then it was only after her family published them many years later, that she became known as like one of the world's greatest poets in English language. Or
Vincent van Gogh. He was an unknown until he died, and then everyone recognized his paintings were amazing.
Right. Well, for the final establishment of his immortality, has Bach appeared on Doctor Who?
I don't think so. No.
Van Gogh has.
So Van Gogh has, yeah.
I don't think Emily Dickinson has. I wonder which other composers in the world of classical I would most adhere to or not. Because it's such a wide expanse that to just dive off the cliff in search of one fish or the other is a difficult errand.
Oh, it's a wide world and it's worth getting into. I'd recommend it.
What's like the greatest classical performance you've ever seen, like in real life?
In real life, well, I've gone to Symphony Hall in Boston a few times.
I have a little bit of a problem with how to react at classical music concerts. There seems to be this heavy implication that one ought to be extremely reserved at a classical music performance.
Yes.
And I don't always feel that way. And so I find myself a little bit inhibited.
You want to hoot and holler?
I don't want to hoot and holler, but I don't know. And yes, it's typically not dancing music, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too self-conscious.
There's different venues that you can go to that kind of audience participation is welcomed. Not in the high-end symphony concerts like at Symphony Hall in Boston or elsewhere. But to get back to your original question, I think the last concert I went to at Symphony Hall that I really enjoyed was, and I think I told you about this once, was a couple of years ago. They played Mahler's Sixth Symphony there, which I really enjoy. It's one of my favorite pieces. And Andras Nelsons is the new conductor at Boston Symphony. He's fantastic. That's the...
is that New World?
No, that's the symphony that has the famous hammer blows.
Oh, yes.
With the big wooden hammer.
Oh, I would go see it just for that. Imagine if you were like the world's greatest hammer person. Well, I suppose that it's just a percussionist, eh?
Yeah, it's just a percussionist who has to be a expert in a whole bunch of different instruments. But
right.
Every once in a while, he gets to break out the huge sledgehammer for like Mahler's Sixth or something in Wagner.
Nice. That's got to be very satisfying. Like the pinnacle of your career. Boom.
Yeah.
So do you follow modern composers?
I try to a little bit. I mean, modern composers are very difficult. They can be very difficult. Tonality is not such an important deal for them.
Is that like it is for all of them, though? Are they all like...
No, they're not all like that.
Postmodern, everything has to be blah, 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 blah.
But it's not something that's easily accessible like anything before the early 20th century.
So are there modern composers that compose in a classically, tonally accessible kind of way?
There are. I don't know if I can come up with any examples off the top of my head because I'm not as well versed in that genre.
It's just curious because when I think about other styles of music, there's a sense of that the music is evolving. And so even though you can, let's just take rock music, even though you can take certain examples from 30, 40 years ago and say, wow, those were amazing songs, there's certain things that they're doing that are pretty rudimentary, right? Which you would just not hear today because it's evolved. And so there should be the potential with at least some of the modern composers of any kind of style of music for it to be at least as good, if not continuing to get better. Like one would imagine, theoretically, that if classical music continued, that the greatest composers ever should be still yet to come, unless there's something about the nature of classical that just means that it's the best is in the past. But
again, a lot of these composers aren't appreciated in their times as much as when they're long gone. Yeah,
true.
So it might take a while before we realize who today's Bach is.
But just like podcasts, Tom.
So you liked it, but didn't blow you away.
I definitely liked the number 25 was a big standout for me. It's not that it was moody, and it's funny because I mean, if you looked at the mood of all the music I listened to, most of it's probably happy.
Yeah.
So I wasn't drawn to number 25 because it was a minor or because it was sad. I just felt it was a more, I don't know, it seemed more delicately crafted than the other ones. It's like I felt like I was blowing through, like a lot of the other ones, I felt like I was blowing through these like amazing machines at like 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And this one, I kind of felt like I was in this boat and I was looking at this amazing scenery, but it was going by very slowly. So it was like slow and rich. And so I still wasn't capturing all of it on the first or second or third or fourth pass, but it felt like it had more sort of time to grow in my ears and such. It felt like a calmer sort of place to be. Right. And so I could imagine trying to find some other compositions, either of Bach or someone else, where it had that same kind of approach, where it wasn't like, okay, I have to like strap in for a roller coaster here. I can sort of, chill out with this thing.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you gave it a try. Something of mine I'm very interested in that I'm glad to be able to share with you.
Music appreciation and what someone likes and what someone doesn't like is a very, very picky individual thing. It can be a very dodgy proposition sometimes to share your favorite music with your friends, I think.
Yeah.
Because like you really love it and you're like, oh, dude, you have to listen to this. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And they want to be nice and they listen to it. Oh, what'd you think? Oh, it was all right.
Well, for Bach, I would certainly want his work to be on the offsite backup that gets shot out into space.
Yeah, that's making your top 10 list?
It's right at number one, because once the asteroid hits, I see that as his music as kind of like a compressed version of Western civilization, that you could unpack all of Western music out of what he created as a foundation.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, that's cool. So Bach is like a zip file of knowledge.
Yes.
And understanding.
Yes. It's a big Western civilization tarball.
Okay. But let me push back on you a little bit, Tom, because has Western civilization actually done good by humanity the last several centuries?
Well, there's certainly parts of it we want to save. If we recreate Western civilization after the apocalypse,
right,
you want to make sure you start from a good foundation, and Bach has to be in that foundation.
What about Eastern civilization? You keep slicing the world in half here, brother.
Well, I'm just talking about what I know. Okay, so moving on to homework part 2.
Yes.
Just to recap, you had several episodes ago, you were very distressed that I had not read Ender's Game. I have subsequently read Ender's Game, and then you have subsequently reread Ender's Game in the form of an audiobook.
Yes, we both did this in the form of an audiobook. And standard issue, spoiler alert?
Yes, so spoiler alert. If you haven't read Ender's Game, we're going to spoil it. But it seems like if you're a geek, you've probably read this book. That seems to be what you're suggesting. Although I had not read it, and I was able to avoid spoilers on it. So,
well, it's just that it's one of the most famous sci-fi books. It's probably I can't think of a more famous one since the 80s. So the first thing I had to get over with was the audio version, because I was not used to people reading books. I was like, okay, I'm going to hear somebody's voice reading it. That wasn't a surprise. It was with how much emotive inflection the different voices were using for the different characters. I was not prepared for them to like ham it up as much as they did.
Yeah, in this particular audiobook, unlike a lot of audiobooks where it's just a single narrator, they used several different voices, and some of them were doing kind of a dramatic reading of dialogue.
there was one of them, I think one of the generals takes on this like New Jersey garbage collector style.
Yeah, the main narrator also used different accents for different characters as well, didn't he?
Yeah, so that threw me off a little bit, because especially having read it before, maybe that was why it was so jarring at first, is that have you ever had this experience? You read a book, and so you get sort of a mental notion of what the character looks like or how they sound, and then you see the movie version, and and you have this bit of a like mental jigger to get through. So that's how it was for me.
So I have a few questions for you.
Yes.
And perhaps this will telegraph how I felt about the book.
I'm guessing. I'm keeping my guess to myself just to keep our listeners.
I'd like to know why you think this is one of the greatest sci-fi books ever created. I guess the second part of my question also is, having read it now, many years after you had first read it, whether it felt different to you.
Okay, so technically, I just want to say for the record, it's referred to often as one of the greatest sci-fi books ever.
Okay.
All right. I of all the sci-fi books I've read, I would put it up there as one of the better ones I've read. Would I put it above, like, Foundation? Would I put it above Stranger in a Strange Land? Would I put it above some of the steampunk stuff? Maybe, I don't know. It would be an interesting tournament. But yeah, I still really liked it. Knowing the story obviously takes away from the big reveal at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So there was not that dramatic suspense. And I guess I have to admit that on second reading, it did feel a little drawn out in terms of like, okay, he set up this sort of point about the triad of Ender and Valentine and Peter and their characterizations and the balance there, or friends versus enemies and violence versus compassion. And it did feel like he sort of hammered that a little too hard for too many pages. But I don't know if that's just because I already knew what the resolution was. So it was hard for me to criticize that or not.
When did you first read it? How old were you when you first read it?
Maybe 10 years ago.
Okay. So you were well into adulthood.
Yes.
Okay, because it came across to me like it was a book designed in a laboratory to appeal exactly to 14-year-old boys. I can understand how a young person could really get into that book. I mean, it's basically an epic juvenile fantasy. That's what it came across to me. As someone many decades removed from that target age group, it kind of fell kind of flat for me.
Huh. So don't you think that sexuality is missing from it though, for it to be your classic 14-year-old boy fantasy? I mean, Ender's pretty asexual.
Yeah, but it's basically the trope of the super student goes away to boarding school and becomes a wizard. That's been done over and over again.
Was that done before this book though?
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I remember reading like the Great Brain Goes to the Academy, which is basically the same story.
Okay, so did this appeal of I shouldn't say appeal. Did this theme, right? Where I guess we should probably spoil it for people who don't want to read the book, eh?
Yeah.
Just give them a little thumbnail sketch.
Go for it.
Okay. So years from now, we get attacked by this alien species, and we repel them a couple times, and oh my gosh, we have to like prepare for the next invasion. And so the military creates this program where they essentially try and search out and filter through children to find the next military genius, the next Napoleon or Alexander, whomever. And they get these recruits and they fly them up to this battle school on the moon, and they basically subject them to this intensive education and mock combat in this zero gravity kind of combat sphere. and train them there so that they can be the commanders of the fleet that's going to repel the alien invaders, essentially. So Ender is one of these students, and the thing with him is that he is the third child of a brother and a sister, Peter and Valentine, and Peter was the first candidate recruit that the military tried to use, but he was much too ruthless and vicious a killer, and so they determined he would not be able to effectively command and create a team. And Valentine, the other end of the spectrum, was much too compassionate, and so she would not have the killer instinct needed in a battle commander. And so they were hoping Ender would be the balance between these two. And so a lot of the book is how they create this enormous amount of pressure on him to reach his full potential as a commander, where he's constantly struggling with wanting to be a good person, wanting to express compassion, and yet every force around him is forcing him to become the most effective, ruthless military commander of all time. So you didn't find that kind of theme compelling? You can say no.
No. I mean, I can understand why it's popular. I can see all the little parts of it individually that work as far as being a thrilling fantasy. And all the, the little battles they have in the zero-G room are sort of interesting at a certain level, but I kind of got bored from him winning every single time. It was just like kind of boring after a while that he always won, and all the way through the book, all the way to the end, he always won, and there wasn't much of a up or down in his path and in his journey.
Well, the struggle that's really going on, right, is him facing the inner Valentine and the inner Peter, right? And he definitely goes back and forth with that.
Does he though?
Well, he checks out and then he reintegrates, and then he checks out and then he reintegrates, and I mean, at the end of the day, he sort of resigns to the fact that they're creating this monster out of him.
Yeah, but those are the very briefest of episodes. I don't know.
Did you like the mind game and the giant's drink and all that?
That was interesting because, I mean, that was part of what is enjoyable about sci-fi when they speculate onto future technologies, and that actually has turned out to be very prescient. That fantasy game he's playing is basically playing Zelda on the Nintendo Switch that is today, but that was written 30 years ago. So that was interesting. He's basically having his entire education done through an iPad. It sounds like.
Right. No, I liked the giant's drink because it set up this whole sub-metaphorical world. And then so you're left to think, okay, well, what's going on here? And why is the computer... I mean, so in the end, I don't know if this was totally clear at the end of the book, but it seemed pretty clear that the aliens were communicating with him through the game. Right.
And then when the aspects of the game showed up in that epilogue when he finally reaches the alien planet, that was interesting too.
Yeah. So I liked and they explore... He explores this concept more in the next book, Speaker of the Dead. But the other type of movie this is how do we communicate with aliens? Like it's very similar to Arrival in terms of you have something completely alien. How do you? And they obviously take a completely different tact than Arrival does at the very beginning in saying, okay, well, let's go wipe them out. But there's this section as Ender's flying off to command school where he's like, well, why are we fighting the buggers? And have we tried to reach out and communicate to them? And what's going on there? What's the theory? And then obviously after the whole thing is complete and he's trying to resurrect the species, he gets into that. But they, because the buggers were completely telepathic species and they have no externally written verbal record, it was never clear to them that the humans were self-conscious. Right? That was the whole miscommunication.
Right. They operated on a hive intelligence.
Right. And so slicing up a human was nothing because you're not slicing up a self-conscious, it's like a fingernail. I thought that was kind of cool, but you didn't like it, Tom. That's
I mean, there's various little sections of it and details of it that are interesting in isolation. As a whole, though, I was just bored by it because the characters themselves weren't that interesting to me. Ender always won. And the subplot with Peter and Valentine basically becoming world-renowned political pundits in their spare time, I thought was just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not really defending it with much vigor, much passion. But I always come back. I don't want to bore our podcast listeners because I feel like I always come back to the same themes of a subjective experience. It's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if I can accurately say whether I still like this book or not. I mean, I did enjoy listening to it the second time.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad book, and I can see how someone could really enjoy it. I mean, it's well told, it's well put together. Like I said, I think if I was 14 years old, I would probably love it. Now, not so much. It's right. I think I want a bit more nuance in the characters, I guess. And I think the twist at the end was fairly well telegraphed ahead of time, so that wasn't a surprise to me.
Right.
The other thing that bothered me was that, I mean, he was this brilliant tactician, Ender was, winning battle after battle after battle, but he wasn't able to figure out that they were manipulating him.
Well, no, he figured out halfway through that they were manipulating him in terms of becoming commander. He didn't realize that the final battle wasn't a simulation.
Yeah, he didn't realize he had just destroyed the entire bugger race.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty good blind spot to have.
That's true. Yes, he did miss that.
He was the Napoleon of his age, but didn't realize he was fighting his greatest battle.
Right.
So is that a victory for him, or is it a victory for the generals that were manipulating him? It's more so the latter, I think.
Right. Okay. So, terrible book, terrible general, terrible idea to read the book in the first place, and probably a terrible person to pick to do the podcast with, Tom. So I think we could probably just end it here on episode 12. And
I'm
12
sorry.
is a nice round number, right?
Are you disappointed with me?
Clockwise. No, I'm meta confused with cognitive dissonance about what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's why I was asking you. It's like, what was it about this book that you were so shocked that I haven't read it?
I guess the only thing I can point back to is the first time I read it, I thought it was amazing.
Okay.
But now I guess it's not, because you've shown me the light.
Well,
I mean, you've destroyed that experience for me, so that's good, right?
No,
it's good.
No,
it's good to know the truth.
What do I know? You just shouldn't listen to me.
What's better, ignorant happiness or sad truth? Right?
I'm just explaining why I didn't like as much as you might have liked it. That's all. I'm not saying it's
no. I don't think you're doing anything nefarious, but I am having a little bit of an existential crisis here in terms of what I like and what I don't like. I've been having this crisis for the whole podcast, though. So, because there isn't really any. Wow, is it true? Like line of music or movies or like my wife really likes reading, and so she has all these books she loves, and my son likes all this music, and my daughter's the huge reader too, and she likes all this stuff. It's like, why is there no thing like that?
What do you mean? There's no thing like that. What do you mean?
Well, like, I don't know. Like, I like Doctor Who, but I bet you or somebody, equally as clever could like shoot that down for me. I could be like, oh yeah, what a terrible episode that was. I'm not watching that again. Maybe I'm just very convincible. Well,
you should say you're gullible.
Yeah.
You gotta stick up for your opinions.
I guess. But
if you loved Ender's Game, hey, it's fine. Go with it. You can love what you like. We're geeks, right? You can love anything you want as long as you love it. It's yours.
Right, but then when you point out a good point about why this particular thing was not good, then I'm like, oh, you know what? I see that. And now that I see it, I can't not see it.
Oh, dear.
You know what I mean?
Have I done a bad thing?
I don't think it's you, Tom. I think it's the whole world has been doing to me for a long time. I have a little existential bone to pick with the world, I think.
Yeah, so you shouldn't mix your opinions with other people's opinions and get it all in a big mess.
I have to find some artistic expression that I really like just for the thing in and of itself that someone can't take away from me. That's what I need to find, man.
Growing tomatoes.
Possibly. Throwing some snap peas down the ground. Just sticking my hand in some dirt. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe I'm making it too... That's the thing. So Ender's Game is a very long book, a lot of characters and details, etc., subplots. Maybe I just need to pick one thing, like, I like sticking my hands and feet in dirt. And then the world can't take that away from me. It's too simple, right? It's too raw. It's like, what are they going to do? Criticize my sensory experience?
Hey everyone. If you have comments or feedback about something we've talked about on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Join the discussion on the 2-Bit Geeks subreddit. Tweet us at 2-Bit Geeks or send us an email at 2bitgeeks@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.